Hey guys, so we're not able to get together right now, so I'm doing these videos so that we can still kind of learn and have some time that we're kind of together but not together. Uh, so what I'm wanting to talk to you guys about today is the last few weeks that we were together, we were talking about the things that Jesus's life impacted on our freedoms, our how we do schooling, all the social injustices. Um, so we looked at what life would have looked like without Jesus. So now we're gonna start focusing on what Jesus's life should mean for us and what are we supposed to be doing with this knowledge that we have about Jesus and how he led his life. So one of the biggest questions that we need to ask is, how should we live and how should Jesus' life affect us? And what are we called as Christians to do? So one of the things that I want to look at is we're called to holy living. 9 times in the Bible, we are called to be holy. So we're going to look at some of those verses, and we're going to start with 1 Peter 1:13 through 16. And it says, "Therefore, get your minds ready for action, being self-disciplined, and set your hope completely on the grace to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, do not be conformed to the desires of your former ignorance, but as the one who called you is holy, you also are to be holy in your conduct. For it is written, 'Be holy because I am holy.'" So what does it mean to be holy? When we look up the word holy in both the Greek and the Hebrew, we have different meanings, but they're pretty much the same. So when we look it up, and we look it up as how God is called holy in the Hebrew, it means above, transcendent, apart. So when we think of God, how he's holy, God is above us. He's transcendent above what we can understand. He is set apart. So what does that mean for us? How are we to be holy? And when you look up the word in Greek in the New Testament, in which they used in 1 Peter, the word is hagios, and it means to be set apart. So we are literally called to be set apart just as God is set apart. Now, we can't be set apart on that same level as God, but we are called to be set apart from the world just as God is set apart from the world. So what does that look like? What does that mean? How are we supposed to live? And I think when we think about that, we're supposed to live the same way that we've seen Jesus live. He was holy. He was set apart. He was different than everything else and everyone else in the time that he was walking on the earth. So what does that mean? It means that we too should be different. When we're together here at church, we're around like-minded people. So it's easy to be doing the same stuff together here. But when we're outside of this building, are we still carrying on what we would do here, or are we acting the same as the world? And this is what we've got to really start to learn, how to make sure that our character falls in line with what God calls us to do, what we're called to be, which is holy. So we have to learn how to live apart from the culture. So, how do we live apart from the culture? How do we live our lives like Jesus? So, how do we live? Kind of, when we think about today and we think about the term rebel, we think about people that are rebellious against the government, people that are rebellious against the church. But what does the word rebel mean? The word rebel means a person who rises in opposition against an established government or ruler, or a person who resists authority or control or convention. So, what does the word rebel, how does that apply to Jesus? Do you think Jesus was a rebel? Do you think that he went against the social norms and the societal norms? Do you think he went against the religious norms? Do you think he went against the rule of government at that time? These are things that we're going to look at. So Jesus would have been considered a rebel at that time because he was not afraid to call out the hypocrisy of the Pharisees and the scribes and the teachers in the Jewish temples. Matter of fact, he made it a point that he would go into the temples and teach differently than what they did. And he would call out the actions that they were doing as self-righteousness. They were lifting themselves up and making themselves look better because they were trying to say that they were living by the law. But Jesus would point the fact out that the law wasn't what was supposed to be guiding man. It was there to help man live. When Jesus was and the disciples were walking through the field and they were picking stuff to eat, or when Jesus was healing on the Sabbath and the Pharisees tried to call him out on that, Jesus even made the point to say that man was not made for the Sabbath, but Sabbath was made for the man. The rules that God gave man were there to help guide us to a holy living. Another way that he was a rebel was he was always caught hanging out with what were seen as untouchables, or he was hanging out with tax collectors, sinners. These were considered people that were lower class. People that were, if you were a Pharisee or a scribe, or if you were a Roman governor at the time, you weren't seen with these people. You were supposed to avoid them. But Jesus, these are the people that Jesus hung out with. So he was called friend of sinners. Another way that he went against the societal norms is he would call out the rich. So he even made it a point to point out that it's harder for a rich man to enter heaven than it would be for a camel to walk through the eye of a needle. When approached by a rich man and he said, "What must I do to get in heaven?" and Jesus told him, "Give away all that you have and help the poor," the man considered himself to be doing everything else right. And when Jesus gave him all these other things to do, but when Jesus came to that part of it, the man walked away disappointed because he wasn't willing to do that. So how else was Jesus a rebel? He made outrageous claims of being the Son of God. Now, he didn't first say he was the Son of God, but when people would ask him if he was the Son of God, he would not correct them. And when Peter said that he was the Son of God, he even said that you have learned this by the Holy Spirit, not by his own words. And then afterwards, in Jesus' teachings, he would make it a point to make it known that he and the Father were one. So you have all these people following Jesus, And some of them are spies for the Pharisees. And they're trying to figure out a way to get rid of Jesus because they hate him, because he is going against their norms. He's going against their rule. And he's teaching based on God's love. He's trying to show people that the rules are only meant to show us our sin. Truly, that's what it's doing. And the rules are there to show us that we can't live a perfect life and that we need God. And Jesus is trying to teach them this. So, as we start to dive in more about how we can live a holy life, I want you guys to keep in mind maybe some of the different things in your own lives that we need to become more aware of things that we don't necessarily see as a big deal in society, but would God see it as a big deal? Would he see that maybe as something he would prefer us not to be doing? Would he see that as sin? And that's what we start to have to look at when we're trying to figure out why we need to change with the information that we have about who Jesus was and what we're called to. All right. Well, I'm going to close it there, and we'll see you guys when we can get back together. But until then, I hope that these videos can kind of help teach you a little bit and help encourage you guys a little bit. Stay safe, and have a good day.